You're watching Console Conversations.
Hello everybody, it is me, What's of a Germany Ball, back from the horrifying episode. I'm sorry if it made some of you guys scared to walk in the dark ever again and terrified of every noise you hear. I'm so sorry for that. But, time to rank a company's consoles that I actually am not a complete moron on. Atari. Yeah, Atari. Ever heard of them? They're kind of the driving factor for why video games exist in the home today. And even though they only had one truly great console, it doesn't matter. They were incredibly innovative in the arcades, in the home console industry, in the controller industry. They were innovative and trounced all their competition with the Atari 2600. The Atari 2600 was a pretty great system at the time, offering experiences you couldn't find anywhere else, and great ways to play the arcade games, except Pac-Man, in the home. It wasn't rivaled by the Intellivision or ColecoVision because all the experiences that it had were not available on those consoles, and if they were cheap knockoffs on those consoles. So overall, it was a great system that really pushed the industry forward as the arcade started to seem a little less important then. It was one of the first home consoles ever conceived, and it is one of the most influential. And for a good reason. It had great games that you couldn't find anywhere else, like Secret Quest or Outlaw, and it had great ports of arcade games like Tempest. So overall, a fantastic system for the time with a pretty sweet controller and a really cool look. So yeah, then we get to the Atari 5200. I should have saved this one for the Halloween special. It's terrible. I know there are some good games on there. Actually, there are a little over 10. I went through the whole library, played each one online, and there are around 10 good games. Decent, at least, games. So, alright. But overall, the controller doesn't function, so don't buy the console because you won't be able to play any of the games. A lot of the games were just terrible or were just updated graphics for Atari 2600 games. It was a bad system that's way too big and had a power setup that is a practical joke. Atari, just tried pranking everybody who bought the system with a power setup that makes no sense, and that is very dangerous. So overall, a terrible system. And then we come to the 7800. Well, ever heard of it? No, most people haven't actually, and that's really sad. It's so good. It's one of the best things Atari's ever made. Not by itself. It's because it plays all the Atari 2600 games, and it plays Food Fight, one of my favorite arcade games of all time. It's such a fun little system that's really underrated, with a cool controller, some neat little games that are, again, underrated. Yeah, I don't know why people overlook this. By itself, it's pretty weak overall, but with the backwards compatibility, which at the time was like a brand new thing, so I'll have to give it points for that, unlike future consoles where that's sort of expected, as I said in my previous videos. Yeah, with the backwards compatibility, it's probably the greatest Atari console of all time. Then Atari went weird on us and made the links. Yeah, they stopped using numbers and started naming them after cats. Yeah, weird choice, but okay. I mean, like Nintendo and Sega just named them whatever they wanted. PlayStation names them after numbers, and Xbox just looks in a book of jokes. So, you know, each one had their own purpose, and I guess they wanted to stick out because cats are pretty weird for a game console name. I think we can all agree on that. But the Lynx was the first portable console by Atari, and at the time, it was a really cool little novelty. Way too expensive, way too big, but a really cool system because it was full color and fully lit up, which was insane. It looked just as good, if not better, than the 7800, and that's something, like, pretty impressive. But, I mean, no. Just no. It's a bad console. It doesn't have any good games. Like, maybe one. Pac-Land. It has basically no good games. It's way too big, was way too expensive, but the graphics were great. The graphics were great, and it was a cool novelty, but overall, the system itself is a travesty. Almost as bad as the 5200. And then the Atari Jaguar. The Atari Jaguar. Oh, why? Why do I have to talk about this? Okay, basically, if you don't know, the Atari Jaguar is one of the worst systems out there. It barely functions. It's one of the oddest and most stupid consoles I've ever seen. And the controller sucks. I mean, do you need any more reasons why it's bad? Like, do you really do? You really do? You do? Well, how about the fact that the only two good games on it are a pretty good arcade game that's on all the other consoles and a pretty good shooter. Alien vs. Predator is the best game the system has to offer, and Tempest 2000 is great, but it's on the PS1 and Sega Saturn. Yeah. And there are newer versions of that game that are way better. I mean, like, why? There's also, I guess, Metalhead, which is okay, and Cybermorph is fine with the audio off, but yeah, no games, like nothing. Nothing to entice the consumer over to buying the console, and it was so expensive because it was 64-bit. Sorry if you can't see my huge air quotations. It was like two 32-bit processors that add up to 64, sort of? Kind of? Like, not really, but kind of. It's a terrible system with like one or two great good games. Yeah, no purpose. Not a good console. And then we have the Atari. Sorry, the Atari Jaguar CD. The Atari Jaguar CD. Ugh, sends a shiver down my spine just saying its name. So first off, it barely works. Second off, you want to know how many games were released for it? 12. 12. And over half of them are just improved Atari Jaguar games. Then, like, a fourth of them are just, make no sense. And then the other fourth are terrible. Yeah. Like, not a single good game. Like, even if you're being the most positive person you can be about even every single game there's nothing. And I mean, unless you want a reskin of an Atari Jaguar game, sure. But every original game it has on there is either way too confusing and terrible, or just really terrible. I mean, the sequel to Cybermorph is probably the best game on there, but the sequel to Cybermorph is the best thing you have. Well, I just feel sorry for you. So, I talked bad on a lot of these consoles, and I talk really good on some of them, but it's time I actually rank them. So with backwards compatibility, it goes the Atari 7800, the Atari 2600, the Atari 5200, the Atari Lynx, the Atari Jaguar, I guess both of those might be tied, I guess, and then the Atari Jaguar CD. Without backwards compatibility, it would be the 2600, then the 7800. Yeah, Atari did not do very well after their debut. They barely sold any units after the travesty of the 5200 and the very weak competition of the 7800 at the time. After that, and the horrible sales of the Atari Jaguar, they went bankrupt and kept getting bought out and bankrupt and bought out and bankrupt until now when they're about to release a new console, which I don't want to be controversial like I was last season, but let me just say it doesn't look all too amazing compared to the competition. It might be fine, but look at the PS5. Can't compete with that if you're Atari. So yeah, that's how I would rank the Atari consoles. Definitely not that many great ones, but very interesting to research in my opinion. Just like Sega, it's very fun to look into these old consoles, even though they're not that great. So let me know how you would rank these consoles down in the comments and what episodes you'd like to see in the future in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Be safe. I'm Walter the Germany Ball, and goodbye.